All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here this morning. It's kind of a brief agenda today, but with a lot of documents that I gotta pull up. So bear with me as I flip through. Well, actually, it doesn't look like I can share my screen. Heidi, is that a?
You should be able to as of this moment.
Yes, got it.
Okay.
Okay, so hoping that you're all now seeing the agenda. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. So I just have on this here from last time, little screenshot of the dates that the APR windows, sorry for making anyone motion sick. The windows and the date ranges for the different APR data entry, just as reminders to keep in mind. We do have access now to the first window, which is just the activities, staffing, and participation data. And then the outcomes one will open later in the fall as a reminder. And then Vic and Heidi, I can't remember who the email came from, but we have the local evaluation form that was sent out, I think, to the whole committee or the whole network. So I thought I would pull that up, and I know there was some positive feedback coming in for the local evaluation form. And for the most part, the only changes that I noticed were related to the GEPA measures and the kind of shift that has happened more recently, like the instead of day bands, it's hour bands and things like that. But I got a couple of comments sent in from Beth, who wasn't able to be here today. So and then Vic also just dropped something in the chat. FYI, if you're having issues with the APR, please let Tim Glenn and him know as soon as possible. They already found one issue and they fixed it. So as soon as you find any issues, let them know.
And this is Lynn in Storm Lake.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just got back after being gone for a few weeks yesterday. So I just had a chance to look at the local evaluation and had a couple questions, or thought we might look at a couple things that I had questions on. And if you'd rather that I put it in a document and send it to everybody, I can do that.
No, I think that's exactly what we should use this time for, to just chat. We have Vic here and
Okay.
chat through that.
Some of it is just a year. So on the first page, if you can go back up, yeah, in the red, it says grantee name, and I know it's just a placeholder, 21st Century Local Evaluation Form 2021-22, or sorry, it says 2020, yeah.
Should be something else, okay?
That one.
Yep. Yeah, we saw that oops after it got sent out. Thanks for catching it.
Okay, and then in the section 3, the demographic data, right there at the top, in the very top, the summary where it says demographic data requirement, that whole section still says 2020, 2021.
Okay. Yeah, just make a little note in there about the date, and then
Dates.
yeah, I'll have them fix that.
And then in the attendance section, so like in this first box where it says in the upper left, where it says days and hours, I understand that, so that's what we're reporting on now is days and hours, but I assume what you want in the boxes is the number of students that apply to that, correct?
Correct.
And so I'm wondering if instead of where it says days and hours, which it says down below, if and it kind of question in all of them, if it says number of students, if that made more sense. I just thought that wasn't necessarily clear. I mean,
yeah, we want to make it explicit, and that's one of those things that you're working with it and you don't think about it. So yeah, that's a good point.
well, and for those of us who've been talking about the GEPRA measures, I mean, we understand that, but for somebody who's just
And
going
we've
to
got a
get
lot of new people too.
yes.
So that's a good point. Thanks for catching that.
So, and to me, it would be in all of those sections in attendance. I think number of students, because that's what we want.
That is a great point. I just did a note here that will say throughout all the
Perfect.
tables, so.
Okay, and then the GEPRA measures. I had some questions about clarifying. Well, like Vic said, being explicit. So in looking at GEPRA measures 2, 3, and 4, 2 was pretty confusing. So the definition, number of attendees for whom you have outcome data to report, for how many of these students. So if you look at the next 2, they've combined that into 1, because it's a matter of, the first line to me is, so how many, well, let's see. If we
Sorry,
look at
I'm
GEPRA measure 2,
Okay.
so how many 7th and 8th graders had a GPA of less than 3 and who you have outcome data to report? And then the middle one, of those students, how many demonstrated improved GPA? And then my percentage question, I want to make sure, is the percentage of attendees based on those 2 numbers that are in the above box? Or is it the attendees based on all 7th and 8th graders, not just those?
Who had a
Who had-
less than 3.0
Yeah.
GPA.
Does that make sense for that one?
Yeah, and the first one is really weird. Why, have a number of attendees that you're going to have data, because that should already be in the second one.
Right, and so the wording in measure 3 and 4 is more along the lines. I mean, if you look at 3 and 4, they've done that. And so I think it just needs to be fixed in 2.
Well, keep in mind, what we have there is what the federal language says. Now, we can add some things to help people understand those measures, but we can't change the federal language.
Oh, no. And I'm not talking about it. So if you go and look at 3,
Okay,
Just cutting off here at an unfortunate point. I'm gonna just, there.
oh, 3 is not good. Look at 4.
Okay,
Sorry.
good.
So the wording in the first box for 4, how many students do you have outcome data for?
Mhm.
And who had in-school suspensions in the previous year?
So for the,
That makes sense to me. And then of those students, how many experienced a decrease in school suspensions? To me, the wording in 2 and 3 should be along the lines of that one.
Yep. Let me double check those GEPRA measures just to be sure.
And if I'm understanding it incorrectly, then
I also had
Correct.
this comment come through from Beth Christopher, so
okay.
I think she had the same
Okay.
concern about this particular GEPA measure. The fact that you should be qualifying the people who have the data that
Mhm.
meet the actual criteria, like the
Well,
all in one set.
and for me, the percentage, if it's of those, I mean, are we just doing math on the first 2 boxes? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So how many do you have data for? How many at the increase or decrease, whichever, and then do the math to make it a percentage? Or do they want to know of all, whichever one was the 7th and 8th graders, of all 7th and 8th graders in the program, which to me would be skewed. So like I said, for me, it's just clarification on those things. And that was it.
Okay, I think I've captured kind of 3 different things. just the actual rows that are in the table, making sure that they at least kind of are aligned and how we're talking about them. I liked when you even made it even more explicit when the number of attendees could just say for each one the specific grade levels, because I know it's bolded up above, but this is
But
new
it's
to
hard
us.
to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also the percentage calculation of
Yeah.
what we're specifically talking about.
Okay. Thank
Let
you.
me do a screen share real quick if
Yes, I'll stop.
it's possible.
Mhm.
Okay, this is what GEPRA Measure 2 looks like in the APR. It says percentage of students in grades 7 and 8 and 10 through 12 attending the program with a prior year unweighted grade point average of less than 3.0 who demonstrated an improved GPA. Does that make sense?
I think it
Yes.
does, but I think the issue still stands in this document.
Yeah, we
I-
may need to change that document because this is exactly how they have it in the APR for that
And-
particular measure.
I think it's that third box for me, the percentage. So I think it just says percentage of these attendees. Somehow that just needs to be clarified that you're essentially all you're doing is math on the two numbers you already have to
Okay.
make it a percentage.
Well, and that's why we need to have this meeting so that we can get this in there and make it easier for folks when we send out that template.
I just had an idea, but I don't know if it causes more confusion. But what if the rows were, there was one more column that had a number for the rows, so then that percentage one would say in parentheses, take row
Yeah,
2 divided by 1 or something like that.
yeah. Explain to them how, I like that.
Yeah, we could do that. If it's going to make it easier for people to understand and report the data, we can certainly add that in there.
Yeah.
Just make a note of it for me.
Yeah.
And then I'll send it to Ron and Rusty and they'll get her done.
That might not be exactly right, but
No,
was there any other things, Lynn, that you were finding?
nope, that was it. Thanks.
Yeah, I have one other one from Beth that she sent along that I think she did say to in this email that she had already kind of communicated this, but if there's any further discussion, that would be helpful for the whole committee to hear. Here in both the school year and summer gender and special needs table for the demographic section, this could be a little bit confusing having it be totaled at the bottom because somebody could be female, could also be limited English proficiency and free reduced lunch or special needs. So a total wouldn't possibly be duplicative and it wouldn't match.
So yeah, the totals should, I mean, you could total the male and female and you should get your total number, but the LEP and the free and reduced and special needs, those are all independent. And I think in previous local evaluations, they've been in separate tables.
Or they just didn't have a total.
Or didn't have
'Cause I think
totals,
the
Yeah.
LEP for use like free and reduced price lunch, those might have been in one table, but.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Male and female were in one and the other three were in a separate one.
What we really need is like the total number for all of the cohorts that you've got in your grant. So we don't really need that on the bottom.
For the other ones, it would be.
It goes across on the columns.
Mhm.
Okay.
Got it. That is all the ones that I've agreed with. I've noticed too, and then Beth sent in. Has there been any other observations or questions on this form? Okay, I'll move on. I'm gonna make sure I save this so that I can send this along to Vic and Heidi, and Ron and Rusty, I think, are the ones that you said Vic will incorporate these changes. And then is that the kind of last step before we'll do a local evaluator training, is just to finalize this template, Vic?
Yeah, I want to send them the your notes from today's meeting and have them fix it, and then I'll send everything back again to everyone, do a last look, and then we'll send it out.
Okay.
And then we'll have the local evaluator training. We haven't set that date yet, but it's probably going to be early October. But a lot of folks would like to get that template early. And that'll be good. We also had, the feds were looking at what we're doing for evaluation. And they were pretty happy. We're one of the few states that we actually report the local evaluations and put them in our state one. A lot of states pay 10 times what we pay for evaluation, and all they get is a summary with a bunch of statistical gobbledygook that's very difficult to decipher.
That's awesome to hear. All right. So I also wanted to just briefly, I mentioned the APR windows are open. However, some of what we developed in those other templates and tools, we hadn't had the ability to actually go in and see exactly how the system would look. It's great to see that you even have the outcomes slides of what that will be, because that's not open at this time for us to see. It's just the activities, staffing, and participation pieces. So I did notice that, let me try to see if I'm timed out of the APR system. I pulled it up. You guys are seeing that, correct? APR system. Okay. We knew that this was changing a little bit, but what we didn't change in our like template spreadsheet that we have is how these different tabs that have activities, staff, and participation look. So unfortunately, I'll have to create just a newer version of it. I know like we've sent this out several times, but just wanting it to align because this is simplified, which I guess is a positive for us as grantees. So the categories are slightly different, and there's fewer pieces to add, like not necessarily the number of sessions, but simply just how many students participated and the total hours. So that's pared down a little bit. I think staffing is pretty close to what we have done in the past, and then participation, the only change I think that's obvious is just the hour bands. So for the most part, I think it's just making the changes to reflect in that activities piece. Is there any other thoughts or questions about what would be helpful to have as a tool? Okay. We did do the best practice webinar kind of on this topic of APR and getting ready to enter. So if you didn't have the chance to join that webinar or watch the recording, I have a little slideshow that I put together for that. And it's all information that all of us are kind of versed in, having had many sessions of talking about these GEPRA measures. I thought this one was kind of helpful to get a good glance of all the different grade levels that are being used for the different GEPRA measures. If you are serving K through 12, like which measures apply to you. So I can send this along to Heidi again to include in the minutes of this meeting as a resource if you didn't get a chance to be a part of that. Okay. Let me go back to the agenda. Okay, so the committee guide hasn't evolved much more since the last time we've met. I did start collecting a lot of, the last request for this guide was kind of to hear back from all of you on different best practices that you use or tips and tricks that you use for evaluation. I did get a couple of responses which have been helpful, but trying to build out this particular section of this guide. Some examples are here collected from surveys or other types of emails that have come in. So I just want to kind of put that call out to you all again. If you have any kinds of practices that you have in place, whether it be for collecting stories, working with data and organizing survey software, that would be very helpful. And then one other piece that I feel like I am needing a little bit more context for is any other internal assessments that are maybe being used just as a resource of a list gathered, especially for social emotional health and social emotional learning. I know that there's different screeners that are out there. St. Mark uses DESA, Devereaux, student strengths assessment. So that one I'll put in there as something that's being used. So if anyone has anything that they are using right now that's other than their state assessment and local reading math district assessments, then please send them my way, because I just want to have a ongoing list for that. And then Vic says we can wait until next year to finish the committee guide since the priority is the GEPRA measures and APR. That makes sense to me. Just trying to gather as much as ongoing basis to just beef this up a little bit. So that was all I had on the agenda. Is there any other questions or troubleshooting that's come up from now that our windows have been open for APR? Vic mentioned that they've already resolved some issues, so if there's any other ones here, would be a good time to share.
I can tell you what the issue was. Somebody was trying to enter data and it wouldn't allow them to enter the data.
That's an issue for sure.
So they got that fixed in a couple of days, and maybe next window when we're entering the outcome data, we may have the same issue. I don't know. But you know, everything is being changed and updated. So you know what happens with technology when they're making a change. There's a lot of you know, glitches sometimes that happen.
Absolutely.
The good thing is in the CASA system, I just got a notice that everything has gone through. So you guys should be getting your payments pretty quick. Although we had a little hiccup in the system, they asked me about it, and I checked it over and everything was good. And then they checked it over and they says, oh, well, that little issue we had disappeared.
Oh. All right, I don't know if I updated the next meeting date on here. I don't think I did. But we have those, I think, in our calendars now set for every other month. The first Tuesday, so October 4th, it looks like is the next meeting date.
Okay, good.
And so we'll be well
another,
into local evaluation time frame by then.
in October, the feds are going to do a state monitoring visit for Iowa, so I have to pick 2 grantees that want to do a virtual visit. So I'm not going to pick anywhere that has brand new staff, you know, a brand new director. We've got a few, that's just too much. It'll be probably 1 urban and 1 rural. So haven't decided yet. So just a heads up, you might get a nice invitation, but I think I'll call you guys first. And we'll have a little conversation about it before you get any official email.
Excellent. That's all I got.
All right, thank you so much, Caitlin. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll make sure to get the recording up on the website and minutes as well. And as always, please reach out if you have any questions that pop up afterward. Thank you.
Exciting.
Thanks. And don't forget, send me a copy of the
Yes.
document with all the comments.
I'll do that right away.